Hey everyone, it's Jackie here from PrimeParentsClub.com, and I'm really honored to have our guest on today. Her name is Laura Vanderkam. She's a nationally recognized writer who helps people rediscover their true passion for meaningful lives, which sounds great to all of us, right? She's an author of, I know you've heard of her. She has all of these books out. You've probably seen her on the Today Show or Fox and Friends or on the radio, but her books are All the Money in the World, What the Happiest People Know About Getting and Spending, 168 Hours, You Have More Time Than You Think, which I'm going to talk to her about, Grind Hopping, Building a Rewarding Career Without Paying Your Dues, and her new ebook, which I just got and started, is Success Before Breakfast, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. And we're going to have all of these links on PrimeParentsClub.com so you can go get all of Laura's books after we talk to her. So welcome, Laura. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You and I met at the Invent Your Future conference in Indianapolis, which is fantastic, a fantastic conference for women who all kind of support and uplift each other, and it was really empowering. And I took this great session from you called What the Happiest People Know About Getting and Spending. And I came up and I introduced myself afterwards, and I told you that I had some real aha moments during your sessions. One of those moments for me, and I'm really interested here because we get a lot of supporters of this on our site, was about couponing and about how us as women especially view money as kind of scarcity. And one of your things that you said was stop spending all this time couponing. Can you explain a little more about why you said that?
Sure. I asked the audience, to picture a woman who is good with their money. And my experience is that when many people form a mental image of this, they're not picturing a woman who has a great stock portfolio, who's, invested in all these wonderful things with her millions of dollars. That's not what they're thinking. What they're thinking is somebody who's clipping coupons for 50 cents off cereal. And it strikes me that gets to the heart of a lot of women's attitudes about money, is that we view money through the lens of scarcity, right? That there's a set amount that we have, and we have to make the best use of it. And so we do wonderful things like, very careful taking care of it. But we don't think about how we can make more of it. Whereas I think that little boys may grow up more thinking about, well, money is a good thing to have. It gives me the ability to do more things I want to with my life, to provide for the people I care about. And so how are ways that I can expand the amount of resources under my control? So that was what I was trying to get at with that. If couponing is fun for you, if you enjoy it, there's lots of people who view it as much as a game as anything else, then that's fine. But if you're looking to bring more money into your life, you might think about using the time and energy you're devoting to saving small amounts of money to see if there are ways that you can bring big amounts of money into your life.
Like what? Can you give us some examples?
Well, I think many of us don't spend the kind of strategic thinking time pondering our careers and what we want our careers to look like that are really what successful people do. Long-term planning is key to having those long-term goals actually happen. Many of us kind of go through day-to-day of our to-do lists and all the things we have to get done kind of in our job, but not thinking about our job, right? We don't think about, this is what I want to be doing 2 years from now. This is how I picture myself at my organization, or I picture myself at a different organization, or I picture myself with my own business. These are the kind of things we don't really sit there and think about, and that's the key to forward motion. So if there's time you're spending, again, trying to save small bits of money, see if you can spend that same time focused, quiet, thinking about how can I grow my career? What can I do to bring in more money? Do I need a different job? Do I need to work more at my current job? Is there a sideline I can do? There are all sorts of ways to bring more money into your life.
Yeah, honestly, that was a real aha moment for me, as was when you said, when you talk about the mentality of abundance, not wasting your time on things that don't count. And one of the things that you said that really stuck with me, and it seems so minor, is you were talking about, I think some millionaire moms or millionaire women that said one of the things that they didn't do anymore was go to the grocery store themselves. Can you explain a little bit how that helped them become successful and get more money?
Sure. So I was talking to Nell Merlino, who years ago came up with the Take Our Sons and Daughters to Work concept. But she also works for this organization called Count Me In for Women's Economic Empowerment. And they have business plan competitions with women entrepreneurs. And the goal is to get women business owners to bring in over $1 million a year in revenue, because very few women business owners achieve that. And so after a few years, this program had its first class of women who had done that. And so they started studying them and see what they could come up with. And of that group of women, the one thing they all had in common is that they were all getting their groceries delivered. And they were doing this before their revenue mark crossed $1 million. I mean, it's one thing to say, well, yeah, I'm bringing in $1 million. Of course I have somebody else for groceries.
Right.
But they were doing that before that happened. They were actually, as they were building their businesses, they were very clear about the value of their time, that their time was best spent on the three categories of activities that they did, their personal core competencies. So these were nurturing their career, which meant building their business, nurturing their family and friends. No one can be the same parent for your children that you can, or the spouse for your husband. And then finally nurturing themselves. Unfortunately, no one can sleep or exercise for you, or feed yourself healthy meals or other things like that. These are things you have to take care of for yourself. So they spent their time on those three things, and everything else, gone. It was not the best use of your time. The way they viewed it is that an hour spent in the grocery store, which I can pay an extra, let's say $15 to have a delivery service, bring that to my house, is time I am not spending chasing the next $50,000 client. Right. I won't get a $50,000 client every hour I'm not in the grocery store, but if I never go to the grocery store again, that's a lot of hours, and probably something will come out of it.
Right. That really was a light bulb over my head, because as a businesswoman who's running several different divisions, you kind of start to think, where do I need to add more people, or, add someone to help me, and what can I outsource? And that really was a turning point for me at your session and your conference. So I was so excited about it that I went back at lunch, and I was talking to, I didn't know, the people that I knew I'd met there that day. So I was talking to a woman sitting next to me at lunch, and I had relayed, she had gone to a different session, so I'd relayed how awesome your session was, and told her about this, and she said, I've been doing that for years, and get this, she pays, because all I kept thinking is, where do you get the extra money to get your groceries delivered? She said, she lives in New York, she pays $4 extra to have her groceries delivered. And not only that, monthly, she has started noticing a savings on her groceries, because you're much more conscious of what you're doing when you're online, clicking what you need to be delivered, instead of going, there's a sale, I'll buy that. So in the long term, paying someone to bring her groceries is actually making her money. And that was fascinating to me.
I believe it. Everything about retail stores is designed to get you to put more things in your cart.
Right.
So if you're not there actually seeing and touching the merchandise, you probably are better about buying what you're supposed to buy. So right. I completely believe that, and that's wonderful for her.
And as parents, I think that's important, because most of us go with our kids in tow because that's what we have time to do, and then they want this, and we spend more time there, and the more time you're there, the more money you're going to spend. So I think even if you're not working a business out of your home, but you're working as the mom for your children, and you can save money and time by having your groceries delivered, I think that was fascinating to me. It was just something so small that...
It is, but it's funny how many people kind of push back against that. I have had a lot of pushback when I talk to people about outsourcing chores like that, because I think people understand it as sort of part of their job description of taking care of their home and family. And the way I always say it, we've sort of bundled certain jobs with certain tasks as part of the job of mom or dad, but fundamentally what those jobs entail is nurturing your children. It does not necessarily mean it has to include all these other things. Right. It's only if you decide to take those job descriptions on part. So, it's up to you. But if you save money and save time, it doesn't seem like there's a huge downside.
Yeah, it seems pretty win-win to me. You also, one of the things that you talk about is that you say people have more money than they think, which I have to laugh because, I know as soon as you say that in seminars and conferences, people start rolling their eyes, right? Like, oh no, there's no way.
Exactly.
So can you tell us what you mean by people really have more money than they think? Because I really imagine a lot of people disagree initially with you on that.
Sure. Well, one thing you can do is, look at the money that comes in and out of your life in the course of a year and think about what that could actually do if you weren't devoting it toward the things that you've previously chosen to devote it to. So one of the examples I use in my talk is of a young couple electing to rent a very cheap apartment, not own a car, just saving all that money that came into their lives and then using it to travel the world for 2 years. And in 5 years, they were able to save up enough money to travel the world for 2 years, simply by not devoting money to the usual things that people think we should. For most of us, we are focused on a very small slice of the money that comes in and out of our lives, and that small category we view as discretionary. But in the larger sense, anything after taxes is discretionary. It's just that most of us choose to spend a certain percentage on housing and spend a certain percentage on transportation. And yes, it is true that you are kind of locked into those in the near term, but in the long term, it behooves you to think about, is this really where I want my money to go? Is this really the priority I have for it? Or are there other things I'd like to do with it too? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But those are things we can all decide for ourselves. Money is more of a choice than we generally like to think.
What do you think parents could easily cut out that we spend money on, that you could easily cut out and save more money than you think?
Well, the first thing I tell people to do is look at what you are spending your money on and see, is any of it not particularly making you happy, right? Mm-hmm. Are there things that you don't want to do, but you're spending money on, and are there ways to cut that down a little? And maybe people decide that, a big one for kids sometimes is lessons. Like, your kid doesn't actually want to play that instrument, and you don't want to bring them, and yet you're paying for it for some reason that nobody's entirely figured out. So that could be a source of trimming. Maybe that money could be spent doing something that you and your child would find a lot more fun together. The thing is, in many cases, there aren't huge apparent items to cut. This is why most personal finance literature starts honing in on the grocery bill, on negotiating a better deal on your auto insurance, on driving less if that's possible. These are all things you can do to cut down a little bit on that discretionary money. The problem is, it's not that much that you can free up doing those things. This is the problem with a lot of sort of personal finance literature. Maybe you'll be able to trim your budget by 10%. Maybe, I don't know. If you have a big shopping problem, then that's something you can take care of. But for most people, if you're not spending money willy-nilly, there's actually not that much space in a standard budget to cut on things that you can't that you can change quickly. So that's why I have to tell people to think about, well, how can you earn more? Because that is something you can also change, and it might be more pleasant than being there with your coupons in the grocery store, or cranking up the temperature in your house, and so you save money on air conditioning, or things like that. So it's I tell people to try, as you're setting your sort of recurring payments, to keep them on the low side of what you feel comfortable with, because that will keep a lot of free discretionary cash in your life that you can devote to things that will make you happy, to trips, to going out with friends, to hobbies. Those are all things that we enjoy doing, and we often don't leave enough space in our budget because we have ideas that, housing should take a third of your budget and cars should take 15% of your budget, when possibly making a different choice would open up a lot bit more space.
Right. That's one of the things I really liked about your books and your blog posts is I do like that, where you talk about looking at money through a different lens, where we think that we have to have this kind of car. And I think you hit the nail on the head with we have to give our kids these kind of lessons, and they have to be doing this, and they don't even want them. And then you're right, we complain about taking them. So why are we doing that? Just to keep up with the Joneses, You're right. And there are lots of free things you could probably do that your kid would enjoy more. There are lots of free lessons around through community centers and things like that. So I think that that's a great thing, that you did hit the nail on the head there. You also say that people have more time than they think. which
Yes.
I'm really skeptical of, but I'm willing to hear you out because I know as a parent and as a businesswoman, and I know that you probably feel this way too. You never feel like you have enough time because as a parent and as a business person, you're always running a million different ways. But tell us what the key is or the keys to that time issue and understanding that we really have more time than we need.
Sure. Well, there's 168 hours in the week. None of us can make any more.
Who can believe that? I didn't,
you may be able to make more money, but you cannot make more time.
Right.
So all we can do is redeploy some of those hours from one thing to another. But the fascinating thing is, I have had hundreds of people keep time logs for me in the course of writing my book, 168 Hours, and in the course of doing workshops on time management for the past 2 years. I have not found anyone who was not surprised at how much time they spent on things they didn't necessarily think they were spending time on. No one has a perfect schedule. I know I don't. I certainly putter around all the time at my house. I futz around on the internet. There's just all sorts of things that we spend time doing that if we were to step back and look at our time holistically, we would probably not want to do with our time. So, I tell people to keep track of their time. Try logging it, much like you'd keep a food journal. If you've ever tried to lose weight, that nutritionists tell you to write down what you're eating because it keeps you from eating mindlessly.
Right.
And it's really the same thing with time. We spend a lot of time completely mindlessly. And if we are aware of what we're doing with it, we can look for ways to use it better. I was recently... You mentioned I've written this ebook called What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. And what I noticed in a lot of these time is that the early morning hours are this sort of underutilized time. Many of us get up and kind of putter around, or we're so focused on getting out the door and getting everyone out the door that we don't sit back and look at just how much time is passing. It doesn't actually take several hours to get people dressed and fed and out the door, and yet somehow we seem to...
Right.
take those tasks and expand to fill the time that is available. And so if we think about it a little better, we can find, maybe there's time for exercise in there. Maybe there's time for more meaningful family interactions. There's time for meditation or prayer or strategic thinking or anything else you really want to do to start the day off right. So I think that simply by being aware of how we're spending our time, we can often figure out ways to use that time in a way that aligns more with our goals than what we tend to be doing now.
Do you recommend doing a time log by hour, increments of 15 minutes for a week?
I have a spreadsheet that I have people do that keeps it in track of half an hour blocks.
Okay.
But what's amazing is most people have many blocks of time that they really can't say, I spent half an hour on this. Which is in and of itself a discovery for people, that they're sitting there saying, writing down Facebook/email/talking with kids. I'm like, really?
Right.
So are you going to do all three of those simultaneously?
I get it, though.
The multitasking sort of stands out as something that people see and then decide, probably I should focus on one thing for slightly longer periods of time, which is a wonderful discovery in and of itself. So you can keep track of time in however many increments you want. If you want to do it in 5-minute increments, go for it. It just starts to get a little bit tedious to write that down every 5 minutes. So I find that half an hour is a pretty good, medium ground between just saying, well, I was at work for 8 hours and then I slept for 8 hours or something. To be a little bit more detailed, but not crazy to keep track of.
Do you find a week or 2 weeks to be to show people their patterns? I know that you do it for research when you have other people do it for you, but what do you find is most beneficial? Track it a week, 2 weeks, a month?
Even just tracking it a week is quite helpful for learning about your life. It's not an easy thing to do. It does take some time. It takes some effort to keep track of time. If you can only do it for a day, you'll start learning a lot about yourself. If you can do it for 2 days, perhaps a weekday and a weekend, you will also learn a lot about yourself. But a week is a good way to get a complete picture of our lives. That tends to be the cycle of how people actually live. Most things we do repeat on a weekly basis, and that has a kind of rhythm that establishes what our lives look like. Often when people agree to keep time logs for me, I get this line back from them after they turn it in saying, well, this wasn't a typical week. And I always have to laugh monologues have not had a typical week. It sort of suggests that perhaps there are no typical weeks.
Right.
So you should just keep track of time whenever you want. Just get started, and you will see that things that are important to you tend to appear in those 168 hours. Things that we think are important but actually aren't important to you often don't appear, and that in and of itself is helpful to know.
Everyone says that, Laura, because they're embarrassed. That's true. Everyone's like, well, this isn't usual. I'm usually much more focused.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just that, something seems maybe overrepresented to what they think is a part of their lives. But time doesn't lie, and weeks maybe. I mean, I understand that there are atypical weeks, but sometimes weeks that are typical don't register as being as normal as they are.
Right. Let's go back again to the ebook, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. You kind of give us this guide to making over our mornings. Why do you think those morning hours are so important? Do you think it's because for most people it's quiet? For most people, the family's still in bed. What do you think that these people who are really successful are utilizing their mornings that the rest of us aren't? What are they doing? Why in the morning?
Yeah, well, successful people know that mornings are a great time for getting things done. This is time you can have for yourself before other people's priorities invade. So you can focus on important things that life has a way of crowding out. So things like exercise, like creative work, even focus time with your family. Successful people know that if it has to happen, it has to happen first. But if it does happen first, then that feeling of victory can set the tone for the whole day. You won't get interrupted. You are, morning is a time that we have a strong supply of willpower, so we can actually tackle these tasks that we'll find difficult later in the day.
Yeah, I actually highlighted that one in the book, your ebook. I highlighted on my iPad that if it must happen, it needs to happen first. And I'm going to actually write that on a card and put it in my home office, because that is a great way. I mean, if you're going to exercise, guess what? You're probably not going to do it at 9 o'clock at night. If you tell yourself that in the morning, it's probably not going to happen, right?
Or even, at a time that people might consider more normal for exercising, like 4 p.m. I mean, there's always going to be a reason not to work out at 4 p.m. And
right.
Unfortunately, it's probably going to be a good reason.
Right.
There's something that's going to come up with work. There's something that's going to come up with your family. There'll be some crisis that you need to put out, and so you will put it off because it's something that doesn't have to be done at a specific time, and in fact doesn't have to be done on any given day. So by tackling something like exercise first thing, you know that whatever else comes up in the course of the day, you have already done it. So it's done. It's happened, and the rest of life can't crowd it out anymore.
And don't you find that sense of accomplishment of getting things done before that 8 a.m. hour kind of carries you through your day sometimes? You think, oh, I've already accomplished this, and this, and for me it gives me more power to go on throughout the day.
I think that scoring a win early on in the day creates this cascade of success, and over the course of the day, you keep winning. You keep that mentality of having had this victory will make you more likely to take a risk maybe later on that could pay off for you. There have been studies into this phenomenon that when people start thinking of themselves as winners, they behave differently than if they think of themselves as losers. So if you can put yourself in a mindset where you're a winner first in the morning, next thing you know, you're in that winner mentality. And so, you've done a difficult workout first thing in the morning. You go into work and you say, hey, I'm pumped up to call these 3 people and try to make a sale. And you're thinking of yourself as a winner while you're doing that, which comes across and makes it more likely that they'll say yes to whatever you're asking them to do. So it really is a mindset that continues through the course of the day.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
In closing, what are the top 3 pieces of advice that you can give to our parents about anything? Time, money, productivity. Those are all things that we all struggle with as parents every day. What do you think the top 3 things that parents can do right now to start changing their lens and the way they think about time, money, and productivity?
Sure. The first thing I would tell people is to ask yourself what you would like to be doing with your time and your money. We often think about what we have to do with our time and our money. We think about not having enough time and money. But focusing ourselves more on the question of what we would like to be doing with it puts you in a different mindset. It puts you in a mindset of things that might be possible at some point. But if we don't articulate these goals, it's very hard to make them happen. The second thing I would tell people is to track your time and money if you would like to as well, to see where your life is now, to make sure that you are going into any changes that you intend to make with your eyes open. Because we tend to have certain impressions about our lives that are often not entirely accurate. They are shaped by various narratives of being busy. They are shaped by larger cultural ideas of what is normal. So you need to look at what you are actually doing and then ask yourself if that aligns with your values. Because I guess that would be the third thing is asking yourself what your priorities are, because life is short and you want to be spending these precious resources, particularly time, which is non-renewable, in a way that's moving you toward the life you want. Because ultimately anything we wish to do is a matter of investing hours to make it possible. We invest our hours in certain activities, and that's what bears fruit in terms of career growth, in terms of personal growth, in terms of having a happy and thriving family. So how you invest those resources matters. So asking yourself what you would like the outcome to be, you can then invest your time and your money in making it happen.
And probably those three things together will help us understand that we don't need what everyone else is getting or what we think everyone else has. Don't you think if you start looking at those three things, then you really realize what's important to you, and you don't need the same things that you see your friends or your neighbors getting or what we perceive them having.
Yeah. I mean, they have different lives. You have no idea what's going on with them and what they value. I mean, they may value entirely different things, and that's fine, because you have to live your own life, and you want to live it in a way that makes you personally happy. So everyone else really doesn't factor into it that much.
Right. Well, thank you, Laura Vanderkam. I sincerely enjoy your outlook. I think it's very different than most of the things that are out there. So that's why I think it resonated with me so much, and I really appreciate you coming on to PrimeParentsClub.com today. Check out all of Laura's books, and I'll link up to her so you can stalk her online. And I'll have everything.
I'd love to have you guys visit me, and my website is lauravanderkam.com, and I welcome visitors.
Yep, well, we'll put all that, and she has a great blog on her site also too. So thank you, Laura. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.